For the recording, welcome back. We are ACI Course 7, Class 2. It's February 21st, 2025. Let's gather our minds here as we usually do. Please bring your attention to your breath until you hear from me again. Susanna, you're sharing your screen with us. Can you undo that, please? Thank you.
Sorry, I really tried to get the camera on.
Yeah, just stop trying. Just do class this way. So let's gather our minds here as we usually do. Please bring your attention to your breath until you hear from me again. Now bring to mind that being who for you is a manifestation of ultimate love, ultimate compassion, ultimate wisdom. And see them there with you. They are gazing at you with their unconditional love for you. Smiling at you with their holy great compassion. Their wisdom radiates from them. That beautiful golden glow encompassing you in its light. And then we hear them say, bring to mind someone you know who's hurting in some way. Feel how much you would like to be able to help them. Recognize how the worldly ways we try fall short. How wonderful it will be when we can also help them in some deep and ultimate way, a way through which they will go on to stop their distress forever. Deep down, we know this is possible. Learning about karma and emptiness, we glimpse how it's possible. And so I invite you to grow that wish into a longing. and that longing into an intention. And with that intention, turn your mind back to your precious holy being. We know that they know what we need to know, what we need to learn yet, what we need to do yet, to become one who can help this other in this deep and ultimate way. And so we ask them, please, please teach us that. And they are so happy that we've asked. Of course, they agree. Our gratitude arises. We want to offer them something exquisite. And so we think of the perfect world they are teaching us how to create. We imagine we can hold it in our hands, and we offer it to them, following it with our promise to practice what they teach us, using our refuge prayer to make our promise. Here is the great earth, filled with fragrant incense and covered with the blanket of flowers. The great mountain, 4 lands, wearing the jewel of the sun and the moon. In my mind, I make them the paradise of a Buddha and offer it all to you. By this deed, may every living being experience the pure world. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may all beings reach their total awakening for the benefit of every single other. Last class, we learned the principal commentary we'll be using to study our Bodhisattva vows. And it was the guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, right? Wrong. It was some other text, right? Somebody's got to say yes. Pia, what's the text we're using?
Wait, I have to check.
Yang Shup,
You can say it, Susanna. I have it somewhere. Homework.
Yang Shup, Shum,
Panchuk Sumlam by Jason Kappa.
Good. And it means rules for bodhisattvas, right?
Mhm.
No, it doesn't. It means highway. Highway
Highway.
for bodhisattvas.
Highway, yes.
The highway that gets us to where we want to go. Jetsun Kappa, 1357 to 1419. Then we have another summary of the precepts that was by somebody else. Geshe Tsewang Sumdrup from the 1800s. String of shining jewels, right? Yeah. Good. Then we also learned, well, we had learned it before, but we were reminded of Lord Maitreya's definition of bodhicitta. And Lord Maitreya's definition of bodhicitta is I was trying to make up something and I can't come up with it. So who can share Lord Maitreya's short definition of bodhicitta?
This is the wish of enlightenment for the benefit, for the sake of every living being.
Exactly. Total enlightenment for
Totally.
the sake of every living being. Changchub Semke, Gendin Chir, Yangdak Zokpe, Changchub De. It's like the only Tibetan I remember. Well, mostly only. Then the reason we grow our wish to reach total enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings is because sentient beings are suffering. And we're a sentient being, which is what motivates us to recognize, oh my gosh, is this suffering like necessary? And then when we reach some kind of insight that it's not necessary, in fact, and we think, well, if that's true for me, it's true for everybody. That's what cracks open this wish to reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. It's because of all this suffering, all this unhappiness. And so in order to help us wrap our minds around how to stop suffering, we need to understand pretty clearly what it is so that we can understand what its causes are, so that we can understand how to stop making its causes, because that's the only way to stop suffering, is to stop making the causes for more. So we learned that there are 3 kinds of suffering, right? The suffering, the suffering of change, which is hard to see that that's suffering, really. And then the pervasive suffering, which is so pervasive that we don't recognize it until it becomes a flat out obvious suffering, and then it's too late to do anything about it. So those 3 sufferings are the sufferings of this life. And then we learned that after this life, it doesn't end, right? In fact, it probably gets worse. So, our first entry into Buddhism is, kind of a downer. Like we're already distressed and we're looking for some source of relief. And we hit teachings that say, yeah, you're distressed and you know what, it's going to get worse. And everybody's in the same boat. And it maybe it would push us away from these teachings, or maybe it would be like, oh, I thought it was just me. And it's like now, to hear that it's a big mistake driven by our, misunderstanding of where happiness comes from and where it doesn't really come from. For those who have the seeds, it's like, oh, finally, I understand. It doesn't make it any easier at first. It doesn't make life less painful at first, but it shows us that, in fact, we can bring about an end to that if we can bring about an end to the misunderstanding. So you had a homework and quiz question that I didn't talk about in class that we were supposed to glean from the reading, I think, just to check to see if you're doing the reading. But it was that verse from 3 Principal Paths. They are chained up tight. They're swept along in the 4 fierce river currents, chained up tight in past deeds, hard to undo, stuffed in that steel cage of grasping self, smothered in the pitch black ignorance. And we were supposed to sort out what that's telling us. So the they is all suffering beings, ordinary beings who haven't experienced ultimate reality yet. The 4 fierce river currents are the river currents of forced rebirth, illness, aging, death. The chained up tight means we're handcuffed by the results of our habits. Our habits are driven by our selfishness, which makes the cage that we're handcuffed to totally in the dark. The dark meaning our misunderstanding, our ignorance, the misunderstanding that doesn't see that our current interactions with others are the cause of our future experiences with others. Like, to not understand that connection between our behavior now and our future circumstances is like we're in the dark all the time and chained to this selfishness that the misunderstanding results in. So these ordinary suffering beings continue to perpetuate those 4 fierce river currents in our very effort to avoid them. If you noticed, nothing works in our worldly life. So that verse goes on to say, think how your mothers feel. Think of what's happening to them. Try to develop this highest wish. This is the 3 principal paths verse that's helping us take our own personal renunciation, our understanding, enough understanding of karma and emptiness, called selflessness at that level, to see that reaching the state of freedom from mental afflictions is possible, and then turning that understanding onto others to see that, oh my gosh, their situation is the same. In fact, even worse, if they have not met some teachings or teacher that can explain that to them, or if they're not even interested in finding some different way to be. So all of that was like background in what we've studied so far that has brought us to this point of, like, how do we do it? How do we get out of that steel cage? How do we get unchained? How do we become the kind of being who really can help others learn how to get free of their suffering? We won't ever become beings who will make that being get out of their suffering. Okay? If Buddhists could do that, they would have. And none of us would have any of those kinds of sufferings. But we do, so they can't. So neither will we be able to just, oh, bonk you on the head, you're free, you're free. Technically, some people have that experience, right? But Shaktipat, wow, all my cares are gone. That is a ripening result of some way in which they helped somebody in that miraculous way. So we think, oh, it really is possible for Buddha to take my pain away. Yeah, but not without doing the karmic deed necessary for that to be the result. So in the end, Buddhists still can't do it, even when it looks like they can. It means some behavior that we did made it such that they could. Do you see? So their job is to guide us, teach us, inspire us, push us, challenge us, right? And their emanations are doing whatever it is that we need as we struggle and fight against them for a while anyway. So how do we do it? Right? We have to stop our own ignorance that causes our own behaviors that perpetuate samsara in order to become a being who can help somebody else do it too. How do we do that? We tu som gom, says this tradition. So let's get our vocabulary. Yeah, we're pretty big. Tu som gom. I think we've heard this before. It means study, contemplate, meditate. So how do we become this being free of suffering so that we can help everyone get free of suffering? First, we have to learn, right? Take, study, hear it over and over and over. And then think about what we've heard. Contemplate it, chew on it, work it out, apply our own reasoning to increase our ability to try it on for size. And then go means meditation, which does mean, on your cushion, deep, holding what we're learning as our meditation object in order to penetrate more deeply into what it's teaching us. And this term gom has the aspect of habituation, getting used to something. So the learning and contemplation leads to our getting used to what we're learning, meaning getting used to living according to it. And our meditating on it on our cushion allows us to penetrate deeply into showing us its truth, so that when we're off our cushion, we are convinced enough about what we've learned that we'll apply it to life. So it takes these two aspects of goming, deep meditation, and then habituating to what we now know. When we deeply understand the teachings, that deep understanding is what propels our change in behavior choices. So as suffering beings, our behavior choices are motivated by selfishness. We're not bad. We're just mistaken. And the mistake perpetuates itself because our whole world does the same thing. We're taught how to interact with our world from the same state of mind that is mistaken. So it's hard to buck the system, the system outside of us and the system inside of us. So we first learn about the benefits of changing those habits, and we learn what habits are hurting us and how to change those habits. And then the depth of understanding from our meditation on the concepts helps grow our ability off the cushion to actually make those changes, right? It's a decision to make change, right? So we're in the learning phase, learning what constitutes selfishness versus otherish. And they use the terms virtue and non-virtue, which sounds, kind of pious and kind of judgmental and yet it's hard to find other words to replace that aren't so watered down that they don't really inspire us. So we'll use virtue and non-virtue. But what does virtue and non-virtue really mean? Like, virtue is something good. Non-virtue is something bad. But haven't we had the experience of, setting out to help somebody and they get upset with what we did? Or we find they really didn't need that help. Or in the process of helping, we hurt them instead. Like, it happens, doesn't it? It happens to me, still happens to me. And it's always so shocking. It's like, wait, I've helped somebody else in that way and they liked it. And then I help you in that way and you get upset with me. Our natural reaction is, what's wrong with you? Yeah, and we've just planted new seeds for making some similar mistake. And if that happens multiple times, we finally back off. Well, I'm not going to try to help people if they just don't want it, or right. And it's our own misunderstanding that brings that all about. So there really aren't certain deeds that are virtue and certain deeds that are non-virtue in them, from them, inherent in themselves. We're going to learn 10 main ones to avoid. That sounds like, wait, there are these 10 that are inherently wrong to do. But as we understand what makes something right or wrong, we'll see why those are the 10 inherent. They're not inherent, the 10 main wrongs, because we don't like them when somebody does them to us. And that's really the basis of virtue, non-virtue differentiation. Is virtue is a deed done whose result is pleasant for us. And non-virtue is a deed done whose result is unpleasant for us. But the trick is, the result of the deed done now is not the experience that comes next. The result of the deed done now doesn't come to us until a long time later, usually so long later that we can't make the connection between this deed done and that result. So how do we figure out what's virtue and not virtue if we can't see the relationship between what I do now and the result that I get? It's a crazy system, right? Nobody made it but us. And we didn't even make it. It's just how reality works. So we rely on a being who can see those correlations directly to tell us, look, when you went to clean your mother-in-law's kitchen without asking her first, just because your mother loved it when you did that doesn't mean your mother-in-law is going to love it when you did it, right? And the reaction of her being insulted, which so shocked me, wasn't because there was something wrong with her, which was my reaction, right? What's wrong with your mother that she's upset with me for cleaning her kitchen? Instead, a wiser reaction would have been, oh my gosh, how many times have I been upset when somebody tried to help me. And it's like, oh, poor David, he helps me all the time, and it's not good enough, or it's this. I mean, I don't do that anymore, but I used to have all these judgments, right? So it's like when we can connect that dot, our own desire to change our behavior gets strong. If I rely on somebody else to say, Sarani, you have to behave like this, right? My ego is going to go, don't you tell me what to do. But when I figure it out myself, it's like, gads, I want to stop this. I want to stop that. Right. And we're much more motivated when we understand the process. So virtue is about doing deeds, the results of which will come back to us as pleasantness. And it's like, well, that's totally selfish. Right. Enlightened self-interest, says His Holiness. It's a great term, because the only way to have pleasant results for ourselves is to just try to bring pleasant results for somebody else. So yes, I cleaned my mother-in-law's kitchen. And yes, it appeared that I got a bad result, but I didn't, right? I made the seeds for somebody else, keeping some area of mine clean. And that's a good result. All right. So virtue, non-virtue is not based on our cultural norms. It's not based on what's legal or not. Fortunately, most of the legals and illegals are based on a morality that makes sense. But for instance, in the United States years ago, it was illegal to drink or make alcohol. And now it's not illegal, except if you're underage. But the karmic effect of drinking alcohol is the same on us, a negative effect, regardless of whether it's legal or illegal. So when we reach this level of understanding, our cultural norms are only a piece of the picture. They aren't the criteria by which we choose our behavior. So we would want guidelines to help us make this determination of behaviors that are truly virtuous, because we can't see that cause-effect relationship yet. So this state of mind that refuses to be unkind or hurtful towards another, no matter what, is what we mean by morality, by ethical discipline. And why is it so important? So if we think that through, where we learned from the pen thing that every circumstance of me and my world is the ripening results of the karma that came from what I perceived myself thinking, doing, saying towards other. And when I understand the truth of that statement, or the ramifications of that statement, and when I want to live in a world where my suffering is less or even absent, and others' sufferings are less or even absent, I see that my behavior contributes to the future pleasantness. My now behavior contributes to the future pleasantness or unpleasantness of the whole world. And that means then that my current behavior is the key through which I can change everything in the future. We have that time gap between what I do now and what I see later. And as we get more and more clear that this must be true, it explains every experience that we have, the why, then our motivation to choose our behavior carefully gets stronger and stronger. And we can figure it out ourselves, and it will take a really, really, really long time. We can rely on someone who's been there, done that, and it will shorten the long time. So doing pleasantness to others is what we mean by morality. Avoiding unpleasantness to others. Now, what they see as pleasant or unpleasant, we don't know. The only way we know is by thinking, if somebody did that to me, would I like it or not like it? That's our only ability to apply criteria. You know, it doesn't mean that everybody would dislike the same things I dislike. So Tsongkhapa says, we can master 3 types of morality, and in doing so, we collect the karma to reach Buddhahood. So no matter how much we wish to reach Buddhahood, it won't happen until we make the powerfully good karma called virtue. That will be the karmic seeds that when they ripen as Buddha, me, and Buddha paradise emanating. And there's no other way to become that being who can help the other in that deep and ultimate way. So it takes really fierce effort because we're chained up tight in past deeds, going down those 4 fierce river currents. We ourselves are that. So is everybody else. We are learning to train ourselves in new behaviors. And that's what this course is about. What behaviors grow us as bodhisattvas? And those behaviors plant seeds for our Buddhahood. So there are 3 levels of morality. Here are the 3. Ne chudombe sultram, gewe chuduki sultram, semchen dunje ki sultram. Sultram means morality or discipline. Ne chudombe. Domba is the word for vows. Dombe means the restraining. So to restrain. And nature is the word for bad deeds. Deeds that plant the seeds that will come back to us as unpleasant experience. That's what we mean by bad. Harmful. I'll try to use the word harmful instead of bad. Good, bad, right? Triggers all kinds of stuff in our weird minds. Harmful and helpful is a little softer. And for me, it helps me open up to be willing to think about it. Whereas I feel like when somebody says good, bad, my mind goes, right? I don't want to adjust it. So I'll try. But every now and then they'll slip out good, bad, because it's such habit, to use those terms. So neche, it does mean bad deeds, but harmful deeds, deeds that will come back as something unpleasant for the doer, nature. So this is called the morality of refraining ourselves from a harmful deed. Any deed that will bring us suffering as its result. We studied How Karma Works, Course 5, to see the correlations, to get some insight into how this process works. Geshe-la said, any thought, word, or action that brings harm to others or oneself is a nature. And he says, to say something that brings harm to others or myself, it's saying the same thing. Buddha taught there are 84,000 harmful deeds that we do. And he taught there are 84,000 mental afflictions. And he gave 84,000 teachings, apparently. Do you think there's a correlation? So to help us out, he narrowed it down to the top 10. The top 10 harmful deeds that we do that perpetuates unpleasantness for everybody. They're called the top 10 non-virtues. We've learned them before. There are 3 of body, 4 of speech, 3 of mind. The body wrong deeds are killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. Killing meaning taking the life of any living being. Sorry, I'm getting all gravelly. Stealing means taking anything of value. Value according to yourself or value according to the other, the one from whom you took. Sexual misconduct means interfering with others' committed relationships, but really any kind of relationship, not just sexual. The 4 of speech are lying, divisive speech, harsh speech, and useless or idle speech. Lying means giving anyone a wrong impression. Divisive speech is speaking badly about someone to someone else, because it'll make this someone else think less highly of the person you're talking to about. A lot of that going on. Harsh speech is using our words to hurt somebody, trying. And idle or useless, most of what we talk about in ordinary human society, gossip, just ordinary. Now, of course, we need to use ordinary speech a lot, but we can do it highly intentionally or we can do it mindlessly, and it makes a difference. Then with our mind, the 3 of mind, usually called coveting, ill will, and wrong view. And they're long story about, what's included in those. The coveting is on one level wanting what someone else has, being upset that someone else has something that you want. It's really a kind of jealousy. Being unhappy when someone has some kind of success. And then ill will is having some kind of feeling good about someone else's misfortune. And then wrong view, the wrong view that this is referring to is, there are two sides of it. First is not believing that one could reach enlightenment, meaning not really believing one could stop their suffering, let alone become full Buddha. And then the second part of it, which is actually more important, more powerfully negative, is not believing that there are consequences to our actions. Like to really flat out, like reasoning, using a clear reasoning to come to the conclusion that no, that is not true. Because if we don't have any sense that what I do affects my circumstances, then there's absolutely no reason at all to do anything other than your selfish impulses. It's kind of hard to imagine that we could come to a conclusion like that, because to just say to do a deed at all brings the immediate next result is to believe that our behavior has a consequence. So it's not that we completely reject that what I do influences my world. It's to come to the absolute, to hold this absolute belief that what I do now brings what comes next. Because when we have that hard, strong belief, then we just do whatever we want. And if we just do whatever we want, our selfishness drives all of our behavior, and we won't care whether we kill, steal, interfere with relationships, lie, right? We just don't care about any of those others when we have this wrong view. So of all of them, it's the worst, interestingly enough. So on this first level of morality, refraining from harmful deeds, there is this teaching about let's avoid the 10 non-virtues. There's a second level of this first level of morality, and it's called vowed morality. Vowed morality is our freedom vows, called pratimoksha in Sanskrit, our bodhisattva vows, our diamond way vows. It's a level of refraining from harmful deeds that we declare ourselves to do or avoid doing, technically, with the open teaching vows. We can, the 10 non-virtues are often called freedom vows, but we don't take vows to avoid them because we would not be able to keep those vows, right? We kill as we breathe, and we can't avoid it. So the 10 virtues guidelines are guidelines. We don't take them as vows. To avoid them is powerful goodness. To do their opposite is even more powerful goodness. To take a vow to avoid a behavior increases the power of our karmic goodness that comes from avoiding harm, right? So we're avoiding harm doesn't mean we're not planting seeds. By avoiding harm, we're planting a different seed in that situation where we would have harmed. So when we have situations where we might have killed and we didn't, it's a good thing. But how often? Well, that's a bad example because like it could be often that we can avoid lying. And we would only get the goodness during the circumstance in which we were inclined to lie but didn't. Which, if you're not inclined to lie, then you only gather the goodness of not lying in that rare situation where you're tempted and you don't. But when we take a vow to avoid a certain behavior, the vow is generally worded as, I will avoid blah, 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 blah. And that means that every moment we are avoiding that behavior, we are gathering the goodness of keeping the vow. So, it doesn't wait until you have an opportunity to lie and you don't. You're gathering the goodness of not lying, all those moments. Like, we're not lying now, and now, and now, and now, and now, and now, and now, right? So the advantage of having vows for certain behaviors is that the power of the goodness of keeping the vow grows, 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 grows. It does not mean that to do the deed or avoid the deed that the vow talks about doesn't make a good imprint on our mind. It does. It's just having the vow increases the number of seeds of goodness we're planting. So in this first level of avoiding harming, we have vowed morality, vows to avoid harming in certain ways. And there are 8 kinds of vowed morality. One of them is fully ordained monks' vows. They get 253 vows, guidelines of behavior, mostly directed towards how to live in a community with other men, how to keep your virtue in the presence of lay people. Second is the fully ordained nuns' vows. Nuns get 364 vows. And often when we hear that the first time, it's like, wow, why do women need more vows? But when we see the advantage of having vows, it's like, yes, they get more vows, right? So technically, they'll make faster progress. Third is intermediate nuns' vows. There are 42 intermediate nuns' vows. And fourth and fifth are novice monk and novice nun vows. There are 36 of those. So they're the same 36 for novice monk and novice nun. So those vows, 1 through 5, they all make ordained people. The guidelines for ordained life. Typically, they wear robes. Traditionally, they live in a monastery. Those vows, pratimoksha vows, are for their lifetime. Then there are also vows for avoiding harming others for lay people, and those are the lifetime layman's vows. There are 5 of them, and lifetime laywoman's vows, also 5 of them. They are the same 5. Why they separate them into different categories, I don't quite understand. The 8th kind of vowed morality is one-day vows. So one-day vows are taking vows to live like a monastic person for a 24-hour period of time. And we can learn how to do that. You get given the one-day vows by someone who has been given them. And then we learn how to use them. And then it's a practice that we can do ourselves by receiving the vows from our Buddha image before the sun comes up one morning, and then for that next 24 hours, we live according, like a monastic, right? Contemplative, peaceful study, right? For one day. It's a merit-making method that many people like to do. So these 8 vowed moralities come to us through the Tibetan lineage of Buddhism, and the Tibetan culture holds to them strongly. Other traditions of Buddhism has variations on these themes, but they all have the morality of avoiding harming others, and the way that they relate to their vows may look a little bit different. So when we're talking about the relationship between this level morality and wanting to take our bodhisattva vows someday, is that it's best to have already been working with some one or more of these first 7 vows, vowed morality, before we take our bodhisattva vows. So 1 through 7 were the monastic vows, 6 and 7 were lifetime lay vows, man and woman. Right? So to have already had this level vowed morality, meaning living according to those vows for some period of time, months, years, it's not specified. It means, though, that we've already tried on for size the ability to go through our life avoiding these certain behaviors. We know the 5 lifetime lay vows: avoiding killing a human or human fetus, avoiding taking anything of value, avoiding lying about our spiritual practice, avoiding sexual misconduct, avoiding intoxicating our mind. I mean, technically, those are not so hard to keep. Probably we're doing most of them already. And then to crank up the effort to live according to that is what would grow our goodness, that would be able to sustain our ability to take and keep our bodhisattva vows. They say that, well, in the instance that someone has not been able to get one of those pratimoksha vows, if they've been living pretty well according to the 10 non-virtues, avoiding the 10 non-virtues for some period of time, they've gathered enough goodness that they'll be able to grow their bodhisattva vows. But either way, they're saying the person who's wanting their bodhisattva vows, the preceptor would want to be knowing, have they already been working on their efforts to avoid harming others in their day-to-day interactions? So when we set about to take our vows, any vows, on the day we're receiving them, we need to have this deep intention to keep those vowed behaviors. For pratimoksha, our intention is to keep them for the rest of our life. Our freedom vows go with this life. So when this life is over, those freedom vows stop. Why exactly? I haven't spent the time to figure out. Bodhisattva vows, diamond way vows, those are forever vows. And we'll talk about it later. When we take our vows taking ceremony, and our motivation is set properly, right? Our thinking is set properly. They say the vows actually form like some kind of aura, like not just around us, but from us, radiating from us. So they really are a tangible thing that happens. All right, let's take a break and then we'll go to the second level morality. So I need to stop share. Where's I'm pausing the recording, redoing recordings on, screen share on. All right. Second level morality. Gewe chudu ki sultram. Please say Gewe chudu ki sultram.
Gewe chudu ki sultram.
Yeah. Sultram means morality. Ki means of. Chudu is collecting, which means planting the seeds, collecting. And Gewe is goodness. So this is the morality of collecting goodness. It's the term for the actions that we do that are the causes for our Buddhahood, the four bodies of our Buddha, right? Buddha you and Buddha paradise emanating. Emanating is the emanation being. Paradise you is the paradise being. That being who is both paradise and emanating is wisdom being, the mind of omniscience, and the direct perception of the emptiness of that mind of omniscience always. Right? The body and mind of Buddha. That is results of causes. The causes are collecting goodness. So the morality of collecting goodness are what are called the two great collections, the collection of merit and the collection of wisdom. So the merit deeds are collected by way of the first four perfections. So the collection of merit, collection of wisdom are what are meant by the six perfections. So this level of morality of collecting goodness is the behaviors that we do in practicing the six perfections. Right now, we've learned before what it means to do them perfectly versus to practice them as perfections versus to try to do them so that we can gain the wisdom through which we can do them as perfectionizers. We start somewhere. So the method deeds are the first four, the things that we think, say, and do in the practice of giving, sharing, right? Giving material things, giving protection, giving love, giving dharma. The moral discipline. So the lower morality of avoiding harming others comes into play in this morality of gathering goodness, in this second bodhisattva perfection of the perfection of moral discipline, the perfection of avoiding harming others. The third one is the perfection of patience, meaning not getting angry, upset in situations where we used to. Has a lot more to do. And then the morality of joyous effort, having a good time avoiding harming others and a good time collecting our goodness. The collection of wisdom is collecting the wisdom that makes them, that will become your mind of your Buddha. And that includes our perfection of meditation, which both means on the cushion and habituation to what we've learned on our cushion into life, and the perfection of wisdom, which technically is the direct experience of emptiness. That it's like, okay, so you reach that once and then you're done. It's like, no, technically, but you use what you now know to be true to fine-tune your behavior choices in your giving, moral discipline, not getting angry, joyous effort, and meditation. Right? So the 6 weave together. It's not like you do one and leave it. Right? They they weave and grow upon each other. So altogether, they make up this collection, this collection of goodness, the second level morality. They result in our physical and mental bodies of our Buddha. There's a third level of morality called Semchen Dunje Ki Sultram. Semchen Dunje Ki Sultram. Ki Sultram means of morality. Dunje means working for all others. And the all others we're working for is the Semchen. So Semchen means mind holders. It implies suffering mind beings. So Buddhas are not considered Semchen. Buddhas do have minds, of course, but they don't have suffering minds. So the word Semchen implies a suffering being. So Semchen Dunje means all suffering beings. So this third morality is the morality of working for the good of all other beings. You know, often we hear the term all living beings. And that implies that once you're dead, you don't qualify anymore. But of course, in this tradition, just because the body has died, it doesn't mean the personality is also gone, but the subject side goes on, right? Your mind goes on. So when they use the term all living beings, it's hard not to like have some imprint there that's like, oh, okay, while they're alive, I will access them, but once they're dead, I won't help. But it's like, no, if you're living now, there's always, right? So I try in my own mind, when I hear living being, I think existing being, because it doesn't matter what form we're in, we are existing. If you're existing now, you're existing. So all existing beings, not just human, of course. And, course A coming up is about all the different kinds of beings. So it would be like the next question. Once I want my bodhisattva vows, like who are all these sentient beings that I have just vowed to take care of? Animals, humans? There's more, right? So we'll learn about the more. Maybe we should learn about it before we take our bodhisattva vows, because some are kind of scary. Semchen Dunje Ki Sultram. This level of working for the benefit of all living beings. This morality is based on the previous 2 moralities. It's an attitude shift for our motivation to do the deeds of avoiding harming and to do the deeds of collecting goodness. It's not different deeds. It's a different attitude with which we do those deeds. So this level of morality is avoiding the harming and doing the goodness so that I can become one who can help others learn how to do it, so they can become one who can help others learn how to do it, so they can, do you see, I can never stop saying that. The motivation is to get that wheel turning for all the beings of my world. Does that leave anybody out? You know, we would say, well, if you say it's just your world, then my world is a different world, then my world is a different. Right? All sentient beings are all sentient beings, unique to me and unique to you. And right, we weave them together. They aren't separate. They aren't one, they aren't many. Long story. So yes, we do the same deeds with the heart of bodhicitta, and the deeds that we do are planted in a bigger way, because as we're doing the dishes, now we're not just doing the dishes to clean the dishes, we're doing the dishes to become a Buddha, to help stop the suffering of all sentient beings. But it's just doing the dishes, right? But it's a different state of mind doing the dishes. Well, how many moments during doing the dishes do I have to have that on my mind in order to become a Buddha? As many as it takes until you see yourself as a Buddha. Right? It's not a 17,541. It's like as much as it takes. So we have these three moralities: the morality of restraining from harmful deeds, the morality of collecting goodness, and the morality of working for the good of all sentient beings. There are three types of vows that correspond to these three, but aren't exclusive to the three. So what are called our pratimoksha vows, the Sanskrit term pratimoksha, it means individual freedom vows, which means it's up to the individual, which all of the vows are up to the individual. It says it's related to this particular lifetime. Pratimoksha vows, those 8 different types. It's the first level of vowed morality for someone who has declared themselves as a Buddhist. I will not hurt others. Second level is our Bodhisattva vows. They build upon the pratimoksha vows we just heard. Vowing to help others, vowing to be considerate of all those beings I'm refusing to harm. I'm going to be nice to them too. Even when it seems like they don't deserve it, even when I don't feel like it, even when, right, make up the reason. Third level of vows is the diamond way vows, secret vows. These are vows of behaviors which, if kept very purely, will result in enlightenment in the lifetime in which those vows are being used, done. But if you mess up, the karma is as powerful messed up as they are kept. And they're difficult vows. Many of them are stated in the positive, I will do such and such. And that's much more difficult than the avoiding. Each of these 3 moralities builds on the next. When our first and second moralities are really, really strong, the diamond way vows are not hard to keep, because you've already gathered so much goodness of keeping the others. Your goodness habits have grown so strong, so automatic. that the diamond way vows are not so difficult to do. So there are 4 advantages to taking a vow to do these behaviors. And again, let me say that just because you're taking this course does not mean you are any way obligated to take your Bodhisattva vows. But if you decide you want to, they can be arranged. So for advantages to taking vows, it's like 4 wonderful qualities built into this system of taking and having vows. Number 1, the explanation says the benefit of vows is that you take them from someone else. And it's like, how is that an advantage? And what that does is it helps us develop our conscientiousness. So meaning we decide we want vows. It means that we go to someone who we see has them, who we see knows how to share them. We go to them and we ask, and we say, would you please grant me my vows? And if they agree and we receive our vows from them, it means we have this relationship with them in which we want to show them that we can, in fact, live up to what we requested them to give us. So we have this need, what's the word? This need to choose our behavior so that we can make them proud of us, so that we can, because we would be embarrassed or ashamed if they saw or heard that we were behaving in ways against what we asked them to give us. Right? So there's this level of increased conscientiousness is the word that comes up, because we have someone else to that we sorry, I'm blanking out, having a senior moment. We have this obligation, right, to live according to what we ask them to give us the guidelines to. So, that's more powerful, of course, if we're seeing them regularly, if we're around them. And when we're around them a lot, there's the danger of getting too familiar with them that we forget. But if we're not around them enough, we forget, right? That they're the one who gave me my vows. And so it's a little bit tricky to keep this one strong in our minds. The second wonderful quality of having vows is because of that pure motivation that we had when we got our vow. To get vows, the vow giver is instructed to give an inspiring sermon first to encourage, right, to have our bodhicitta strong as we're getting ready to take the vows. And then we'll learn that the ceremony itself has a series of questions to the disciple to make sure that the disciple's mind is really, yes, I want these, yes, yes, yes. And then having had that motivation during the ceremony, when we're tempted to do a deed that it doesn't fit, we're supposed to think, of that motivation that we had back then, so that our own like personal self consideration kicks in. So this one, that strong motivation and remembering it, helps us grow our ability to hold to our vowed morality, even if nobody else would ever know. Like the first one was, I'll hold to my morality because if my preceptor knows I would break it, that would be embarrassing. This one is, I recall my motivation so that I won't break my behavior, even if nobody else would know. It's a strong, healthy state of mind to care about our level of morality, regardless of anybody else's knowing about it. The motivation for bodhisattva vows is we're swearing to help others reach their happiness, even at my own expense. And when we recall that motivation, right, our blah, 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 blaming them for something will adjust itself in our choice of behavior making. Third good quality of having vows is that they are repairable. It sounds funny at first. It's a great thing about vows that you can fix them. What that means is that we are encouraged to try even when we foul up, right? Even when we know we can't keep them well, we're encouraged to try because we can fix them. We can repair them. Now, technically, we'll see that with the root vows, even though we can repair them, to fully break a root vow, we can't repair them to their full glory, we'll see. But the not fully broken vows are repairable. And that encourages us to try. Because when we fail, we know what to do to fix them. Fourth one is, if we have 1, 2, and 3 strong, we won't break the vow in the first place. So the beauty of the vows is that to understand about these 3 good qualities of the vows helps us keep them. So with the bodhisattva vows, which are the second level of morality, collecting the goodness, technically with the third morality for the benefit of all sentient beings, there are 2 levels of bodhisattva vows. These 2, Tsatung and Neje. This is Tibetan. Tsatung means root downfall. Tung means downfall. Tsa means root. The root downfall, there are 18 root bodhisattva downfalls. They're called downfalls. The vows are called downfalls because when we do the deed that the vow has said I will avoid, I fall down. Not literally, of course, but it means the seeds I've planted in my mind, if any one of them were to be the projecting karma at the end of this life, it will be a lesser rebirth. So it is literally to go to a lesser realm. It also means we've fallen in our efforts. It means we've fallen in our own sense of self-esteem and our consideration for the impact on others, right? So the term downfall has these many different levels of meanings. Then the second kind of bodhisattva vows are called nye-jays. There's that word nye, we had it up here, nature. The word means bad, harmful. Jay means did, not deed, but did. So there are 46 did bads, they're called. I did bad. It's kind of funny. The 46 secondary downfalls are called did bads. All of the bodhisattva vows come into one or the other of root or secondary vows. The secondary vows, when fully broken, are not as karmically serious as the root vows are when they are fully broken. The 18 root vows are karmically really, really serious to fully break. An 18 root vow, not fully broken, but just a little bit damaged, is what the 46 secondary vows are about. To keep the 46 secondary vows well grows our ability to keep the 18 bodhisattva or 18 root vows even better. To keep the 18 root vows well will help us keep our 46 secondary vows better. They go together. To break a root vow, there 4 conditions must be present through the time of doing the deed that ends up breaking the vow. And if all 4 of those are not present, then that vow was not broken. The karma of the deed is negative. It will come back as unpleasant, and it qualifies as a secondary wrong deed, secondary vow, wrong deed. But the significance of that apparently is that teaching that explains that verified that there are no bodhisattva vows other than the 18 root and the 46 secondary. So apparently in Jetsun Kappa's time, there were other bodhisattva vows being propelled or sorry, I'm having senior moments today. Propagated that were different from these 18 and 46. And Jetsun Kappa's job was to clean up errors and mistakes. So he's pointing out that Buddha taught these 18 and 46. And any other ramifications of those can be helpful, but they're not the traditional ones. So lastly, from the reading, Jetsun Kappa also addresses a mistaken view that was prominent in his time, which apparently was once one has their Diamond Way initiation, and so their Diamond Way vows, you no longer have to follow those 2 lower vows because they're the highest way. That's all you have to keep. And his comment to that is that belief is like a huge hailstorm pounding down on the tender corn crops. It destroys the corn crop so that the farmer doesn't get any corn, and the people he would sell the corn to don't get any corn. That idea is as harmful as a hailstorm on the tender crops. It destroys the happiness of everybody throw that out like so much garbage. It is not true that once you have your diamond wave vows, you can forget the other two. The reason we had the goodness to get diamond wave vows is from having kept the other two vows well. And if we stop keeping them, we'll stop having diamond wave vows. We won't be able to keep them. So the morality of harming others, the morality of collecting goodness are the foundation from which the higher vows are created. So don't be in a hurry to get your higher vows. Create them by keeping these lower behaviors really, really well. Done. Again, class is short. Yay. I'm putting those minutes in the bank. I'm going to need them for course 13 when we get there. And course 12. And 10 and 11. But for now, I almost have an hour in my bank, I think. All right, so remember that person we wanted to be able to help. We've learned a lot that we will use sooner or later to help them in that deep and ultimate way. And that's an extraordinary goodness. So please be happy with yourself. Think of this goodness like a beautiful glowing gemstone that you can hold in your hands. Recall your own precious holy guide. See how happy they are with you. Feel your gratitude to them, your reliance upon them. Ask them to please stay close, to continue to guide you, help you, inspire you. And then offer them this gemstone of goodness. See them accept it and bless it. And they carry it with them right back into your heart. See them there, feel them there. Their love, their compassion, their wisdom. It feels so good, we want to keep it forever. And so we know to share it by the power of the goodness that we've just done. May all beings complete the collection of merit and wisdom, and thus gain the two ultimate bodies that merit and wisdom make. So use those 3 long exhales to share that goodness with one person. To share it with everyone you love. To share it with every existing being everywhere. See them all filled with happiness, filled with wisdom, filled with loving kindness. And may it be so. Okay, thank you. Please be sure to show me your homeworks. I'm going to stop the recording. Any questions, comments?